All right. Welcome, Jakl Den fans and Jakl fans, back for another issue of the podcast. We are here to talk about some of the things that went on in the last weekend during the finals game, the conference final matches on both the East Coast and the West Coast conferences. Talk about that, and then maybe give some insight and expectations into the things coming up next week and maybe what's going on in the near future. I'm joined with my international rugby superstar, Mr. Kibui, the man who has played rugby in more continents than there are than they know what rugby is. We'll go with that. I should have thought of something beforehand. I'll do a better one next time.
You're fine.
But yeah, so this was a very, both these games were fantastic. As far as just here, watch parties, local stuff from Sunday, let's talk for just a second, some of the quick numbers on this. This was awesome. The Jakls had their watch party on Sunday at Dr. Jekyll's Beer Lab down in Pantego by the stadium. Jakl Den had our watch party at the Londoner over in Addison. And then Jason Tidwell's dad, other Jason Tidwell, reached out to, I think it was Boomer Jacks out West Fort Worth, and had them put on the game. And between the three, I think we had over 100 people. We had probably 20 in Addison. I think there was about another 15 to 20 in Boomer Jacks. And the pictures I'm seeing from Dr.
Jekyll's was stacked.
Man, it was like standing room only. It was fantastic. So it was very cool to see. Hopefully that's a little indication of the kind of things we can expect at the watch parties next season. I would love to see us filling every one of these places with fans.
That progression is just fantastic. From the initial watch parties with like 7, 8, 9, the stalwarts from the last 2 seasons. And now, even if it's just a playoff game, I'm glad that we're getting the visibility that we have.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a couple of the things that happened in the last week or so, that are going to give the game a kick in the butt, so to speak. So,
well, let's start with the Eastern Conference game. Did you get a chance to watch that? The Hounds.
I watched the second half. Yeah, I watched the second half of that game. It was a tighter game than the score suggests, right?
It seemed like any second either team could have taken it the whole way through. I mean, it was literally a nail biter the whole way through. Just fantastic.
I was rooting for the Hounds because Karlsa, our fly half from previous seasons, was pulling the strings out there. And they built such a cohesive unit for like a 1-season turnaround from where they were last season, just like us. It would have been such a cool narrative to have 2 teams that were struggling last season be in the finals. It was this close on both sides. It was a great show by them. They fought all the way till the very end. And, New England had to fight to keep them out. It was just a bit over 1 score. That was the difference. And it could have swung either way in that last 10 minutes. So,
man, and what's cool is like you say, the score, you just look at the score, it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about it. But this was a low-scoring game, but it was super kinetic. I mean, the ball went back and forth, a number of turnovers, a number of not many.
There were long phases of play.
Yeah.
There were long phases of play, which are just energy sucking. You go 10, 15 phases, 20 phases, and then back to back over like a half. That stuff just, as a player, it just kills you. And final whistle, they were all just happy to be done with the game. New England, of course, because they won, but they were done.
You got to wonder if there's a point, and I kind of joked with some of the guys here with the Jakls after. You got to wonder if the Hounds, it's got to be almost bittersweet because you didn't get it, and you're not going on to the championship. But at the same time, like, you can relax now. I mean, you're not going to get. It's one less week of getting beat up.
Yeah, and I think they had high expectations because if you remember, when they were drafting that team, they got like the pick of the litter. And,
that's right, yeah.
And we were like, I was mad because they got a bunch of guys, some people, groups that had played together, and we got like nothing. And I was just sick to my stomach. So it's not a surprise that they were there. I had New England coming out of the East, and so They did it. They did the business. They got it done. They did the business in the previous round. They just the kind of team that'll grind you down and then you'll make a mistake and they take advantage of it. So that's their MO.
I think I had underestimated the Hounds coming into this season. I expected
Hmm.
NOLA because they're fantastic. I
Hmm.
expected a huge show out of New England.
Hmm.
And you know what's funny on the New England side? I mean, everybody knows Jason Patras. I mean, the guy is
Yeah.
the guy's unstoppable. But seeing some of the other, you know, Reese McDonald on there, Andrew Quattrin,
Yeah. Yeah.
some of the other big names, Bellicana, that are on that list.
Vanderbank,
Yeah, you know, it
you know.
was. But with the Hounds, it was like I guess I just didn't look as much throughout the season to watch what was going on. But I mean, I'm seeing them in seeing how they performed in the semifinals and the finals. I mean, I'm not surprised that they took it that far. They were playing fantastic. And you're right with Carlson. I'm sorry, Carlson.
Carlsa.
Carlson.
Carlsa. Hmm.
Billy Meeks did fantastic. Dylan Fawcett did
Yep.
fantastic. I mean,
Yep.
they've got their own powerhouses over there.
Oh yeah. It's solid side. They're well coached, well drilled, very disciplined side.
Yeah,
And so those are the marks of a team. When you're physical, you're disciplined, and you have a couple of game breakers and then a couple of just grinders around them, you can go far. So, you know, hats off to them. Great season. New England expected to be here. No one expected the Hounds to be there. So,
yeah.
good on them for getting that deep into the playoffs.
Absolutely. So that's
Yep.
that score. If you missed that game, that score finished 23-17. That literally finished at the 80-minute mark. It was when New England took the ball out of a ruck and kicked out of bounds.
Hmm.
Um, so then New England goes on to the championship next weekend. Uh,
Yep.
and then that finished out Saturday and took us into Sunday's game, where the
Hmm.
Dallas Jackals went up to Seattle and in Tequila at Starfire Sports Complex to play the Seattle Seawolves. Now, this one, coming into it, Seawolves are a solid team. I know
They're
that
an
they've had
exemplary
their
team. They're
I know
not
that they've
solid.
had their injuries towards the end of the
Yeah.
season. I was hoping that would give us a bit of a leg up.
Yeah.
After seeing how they played against San Diego, I was a little nervous going into it. But looking back, I mean, when we played Seattle in Washington early in the season, they beat us by 3 points. And even that was kind of like up for debate if you were watching the game.
And there were like three huge questionable calls against
Yeah.
us in that game, but the refereeing is the refereeing. You take what you're given on the day, right?
And then when they played us down here, that was the one that was a super low scoring game. We came out on top 14-7. And that was the one where literally for 45 minutes, Seattle had the ball
In
on
our
our try line, and we had we had all of a sudden our boys got possessed by the
We had
300
yellow
the Spartans
cards.
and just held the line for 45 minutes straight.
Yeah, we had yellow cards.
Man,
That's such an anomaly because the MLR is typically such a high scoring league. Both sides, Seattle and Jackals, are very high scoring sides.
yeah,
So that was a battle of attrition. For me, that was the game that told us that we can probably go way into the playoffs, that we can make some noise. And I felt confident. I didn't want to say anything, but I felt confident like we could win this game just because of all just the basics that we had and the squad we put out. And then even before the kickoff, the first domino drops and Tui Four can't play. So
man,
yeah, and he was cut up. You could see him like in the warm-ups and he couldn't go. He was choking. I felt bad for
yeah.
him.
I got a chance to see him at the airport when he was flying back in, and man, you could still see it on his face. I mean, it was
Yeah.
he was beaten up by it. I mean, and hey, we had it allowed a couple other plays to go in. Marquez got to start, which was fantastic.
Yes.
Some
He did a
last
great
second
job.
change ups there. But I noticed on Saturday who our referee was, and that's where I got nervous. Uh,
Yeah.
Scott Green. He
Yeah.
has been our like nemesis of the referees the entire season. Just seems so critical and so quick to point the finger at the Jackals.
Pedantic is the word I use. He's pedantic.
Pedantic, that's a good one.
Yeah,
That's
he's
at least a
pedantic.
15-point Scrabble word. That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, referee's a shitty job.
Yeah.
Nobody, they're stuck in the middle, and then, like certain things. Like he gave our scrum the benefit of the doubt when I didn't necessarily think we were the dominant scrum.
Hmm.
Those are calls he gave to us, which we'll take. But for me, as a person who played everywhere in the front row, I understand the dynamics. He was a back rower, right? So I feel like these refs don't have what do they call it? They don't have a clue what's going on in the front row. But you know what? He gave those calls to us. That's fine. He missed a couple of huge calls. I think the call straight to the yellow card after two penalties.
Oh, man.
The first yellow card. The second yellow card is granted because it's collapsing a maul that's going into a scoring position, going over the line. I'm not going to argue that. But the first one, with no discussion, after he'd been as lenient as he was with everything else, come on.
Even the
This is a final.
announcers,
It's not a
even the
league game.
MLR announcers were like,
The MLR announcers made a comment about
get
it.
a warning.
Yes, exactly.
That was out of the blue. But this one, so this one we had some fantastic moves by both teams. 25-28 was the ending score of it. Jackals down by 3 on that one, so Seattle goes over to the finals against New England. Now we had Nick Ben, our Aussie buddy, had 2 tries, and he had that awesome
Aussie.
I'm sorry. Had that fantastic photo try that I really hope becomes like a headliner for next season of him one-handed diving in, full body out, plink right down. That first try of the game was phenomenal.
That's awareness, that's, ability, also being freed by your teammate, given that space and then making every bit of inch count and then taken to the air. That's probably one of the tries of the season for sure.
Beautiful.
In a crucial game.
JD Oliver put in 2. Tommy Beckerman put in 1. Oliver did fantastic on his kicks.
Dude, Oliver was a monster.
And this
absolute
was really
monster.
Cool. MLR Stats. If you don't follow them on Instagram, you should. MLR Stats has some really cool things they put out. They put out a little blurb about the Jackals and kind of finishing on a high. And this was after after the finals game. And it brought a couple things to light. This game was the 50th cap for the Dallas Jackals, which was super cool. That if we hadn't have made it into the brackets and we hadn't have beat Houston, then we wouldn't have hit our 50th cap in our 3rd year. But also, Nick Ben's first try put us over the 1,000th point scored, and JD Oliver put us over the 100th successful kick. So it was really 3 gigantic milestones for the team there that really, we'd have been waiting an extra 8 months to see that if we hadn't have made it into this game. So it was very cool.
Yeah, for the stat monsters, definitely a good one. Some numbers to keep a track of. But for the purists, it was such a seesaw game. That second half, at one point when they cut us open and, I think their scrum half, I think is his name Strauss. I think is it. He dropped the ball. He knocked it on. You remember that? Like he dropped it in the try box. And I thought the arrogance of this man, and you deserve it. Like you deserve to lose just for the arrogance of what you did right there. And it was this close. It was just, we were literally a minute from overloading the blind side. And then they had that breakout. And by that point, if you go back and watch the video, Ali Khan was running on one leg, He was running on one leg for that whole second half. Marcus's knee gave way, towards the end of that first half. And he was already a sub for Tuifua, so we were already struggling with numbers. But so close. So close. I was gutted. I haven't been gutted about anything in a long time. I was gutted after that game.
There were some decisions made in the end of that second half that it's like, I want to ask, but I don't know who to ask, and I don't want it to sound condescending. But I really,
Ask the questions,
at
Prez.
the
Ask.
76.5-minute mark, when we were up by 4 points, I really, really, really want to know why we kicked the ball into touch. We were already at their 22. All we had to do was hold the ball for 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we kicked it into touch, and we gave them the ball, and they found a hole in our line and got a try. And it's like, I don't know.
Well, sometimes, and I get that you want to play the territory and trust your defense to do the job. Hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah.
At the time, there was a huge 50-22 by Juan D. Oliver, took us all the way down there.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, this is it. This is gonna be our game. And their replacement hooker he had been off on a couple of throws, and we were just maybe one overthrow over from being in position, the driving seat to close that game out. But what they say, shit happens, right?
Yeah. You live and you learn, and I mean, I think there was I can't say enough, and I've said it all season. The Jackals that we were this season were miles ahead of the Jackals that were in the season 1 and season 2. So and what's amazing was when we would talk the last couple seasons, and it would be, what did the Jackals need to work on, and we would talk about these giant things. They need to talk on communication. They need to work on defense. They need to work on these massive constructs.
It was like a whole checklist.
Yeah,
like
now it's like it's these little now it's this little stuff they just got to tighten.
Now, honestly, it's discipline. That is really the key here. I remember, JP Zeiss is a phenomenal scrummager, but for some reason or other, when he puts in a dominant tackle, he somehow always ends up getting caught and gets stuck on the wrong side, and things like that, like not being able to roll away on the penalties.
It's a big dude. I mean, he can't.
He's a big dude. He's 120 kilos.
Hit, and then
280
pull momentum
pounds.
back.
And it's small things like that. It's just that's what cost us the game, and it's not blaming anyone, because everybody to a man left their 110% out on that field, right? I haven't seen a more desperate performance than probably, Rugby World Cup, when Ireland lost their semifinal and France lost their semifinal. So you talk about a desperate performance. Those are the last 2 games I'm thinking of when I think about a desperate performance trying to win a game. And even then, we had the ball on their 22 at the end of the game.
Yeah. And I think, in talking to these boys and in seeing the evolution of where they were at last season or where they were at the beginning of this season, it's been fantastic. I think Vara has been an incredible captain. Gola has been an incredible captain. Watching our whole front line just evolve together. I mean, Murray, Coetzee, and Zeiss and Burr. I mean, they've just been phenomenal up there. The back line, it was terrible that Logan couldn't stick around longer in the season. I really hope he heals up and does well. But that opened up a spot for Tidwell to get in there in that back line, and seeing all the things that Tidwell can do. I mean, he is fast. He is defensive. He's
calm.
Yes. I mean, he is so
calm under pressure. Yeah.
It's incredible. I really hope he's starting a lot more.
We're forgetting about guys like Marcel Muller, who started the season. Vogan. Ticho has grown from where he was like 2 seasons ago, and I think JD Oliver is the kind of he's probably the person who unlocked him. He unlocked, and I think in tandem with Nate and Kuka coaching, this was a completely different side to what we had offensively. They still had that defensive starch from last season, but offensively, that they were expressive. They were just running free. It was like, what, boys, go out and have fun, run the ball, whatever practice moves you want to run. And they were coming off game after game after game, running 20, 30, 40 points up every game. So that was fantastic. So.
some of these guys that have been on the bench this whole season, or the guys that haven't even gotten a chance to get out there yet, that I'm hoping stick around, and I'm hoping that we can see more of. I mean, Brock has been kind of a family favorite here, and he hasn't. He's when he gets called in, unfortunately, he gets called in to be wing.
Yeah.
But he's a scrum half, and I mean he's fast and he's scrappy and he's in there, and I don't know if he's on Oliver's level, but if he's not, he's a short step behind. I mean, he's still. I mean, and also, I mean, he played Canada matches the last couple weeks ago when they played. Who was it? They played Scotland and.
I can't remember who they played other than Scotland.
God, it'll come to me as soon as we wrap up. But played those, and then he's going him and a couple others. Him, Liam
played. Mitch played.
Mitch, I don't think Steve's went.
Dewey didn't play.
Maybe it was Steve's then that went. Yeah, and they played with the Canada team, and they're going back to him for the PNC Cup. So I mean, you've got a couple of these guys coming back next year that have this a bit of international cap to them that, hopefully they're able to use that and pick away from it. And what did you learn? What did you pick up? How can you apply it and do that?
The hope is that somehow, some way, one, you keep Kuka and Nate together.
Yes.
We if we don't have the coaches and we're starting from scratch, it's a whole different proposition. And then two is if somehow the ownership can keep majority of the core of the starters, you can add one or two people here and there, and hopefully we keep our bench or at least that depth. Then we have a group of about 28 players that can run the whole season, and it's a long season. There's attrition, so I think next season there'll be people who get more of a chance. Brock didn't get some of those games because Pedro was starting those games.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pedro probably moves on after the season. He didn't play much towards the end of the season. So I don't know if he'll be on the squad. Maybe they also want to get younger. I think his delivery wasn't as quick as JD or Brock's delivery, which is crucial to the game plan. But it'll be interesting to see who we can retain, and just continuities. I can't express enough how important that is for a team to grow.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, one of the things I think we are going to do, so as we wrap up the season, we're not going to be doing the weekly pods anymore that are going to be, because we have no games, of course, but there are some things we'll do. We'll put together another postseason roundtable like we did last year. We'll have about 5 or 6 of us on here and a couple of regular questions, and we'll all give our input. We'll probably do something.
We'll sponsor our own beer.
What's that?
We'll sponsor our own beer.
Exactly. There we go. We'll have the Jakl Den schooner. But, and I'm sure we'll have something put together looking over the roster of who we expect to come back, who's questionable, who do we think, who do we want to see.
Yeah.
We'll have a couple things going on. Speaking of the beer, I did get a heads up today. Dr. Jakl's Beer Lab is doing another release of their Rucked Up Ale.
Okay. Very nice.
August 15th is when they're going to have that. So it's a Thursday, but I believe, if I understand this correctly, the players that are still in town are going to be down there. If fans want to go down there, hang out with them, get a last signature or something like that, have a beer with them and hang out. I'm not sure how many will still be around. I was surprised at how many flew out today.
Today and yesterday, right? And I think end of the month they had to be gone, right? The visas, they had like 6-month visas.
That's what I heard. Yeah, somebody else mentioned it's a good point of July 31st, the end of the month. So I mean, if the team can ship them out today and save an extra month on rent,
put it towards next season. Right?
Yeah, can't argue with them on that. Now, one last real quick question. Next week, New England and Seattle. What do you think? What do you see?
I think it's going to be New England who kind of just pulls it out. So my prediction, beginning of the season, if you remember, was New England, Seattle. That was my prediction. So that came true. I should have put some money on it, but I'm going to say New England just because they find a way to just stifle you. And I think Seattle, as much as they won that game, are just about as beat up, if not more, and they've had 1 day less to rest.
That, that's a good
One
point.
day. The 1 day is, and that 1 day makes a difference, right?
This will be one of the really interesting ones where we have two completely different play styles that are coming in here because New England is much more technical. I think much more. It's almost like chess versus checkers, I guess, and Seattle is plays a lot like Houston. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got the hit them like a sledgehammer mentality. So yeah, I'm definitely interested.
So New England has more of a New Zealand contingents, and then Seattle has more of a South African contingent. So
There
that's
you
another
go.
interesting dynamic. I
Okay.
will say that Seattle also has the first Kenyan who's playing in the MLR. He's a flanker. I don't know if he'll get
Really?
the game time. Yep, he plays back row. His name's Monate Akwe. So Monate is a former Kenya Sevens and 15s player. He was playing with New York last season, got picked up by Seattle halfway through the season. So if I'm rooting for anyone, it's only because there's a Kenyan on the Seattle side. If it wasn't for him, I wasn't rooting for them last week, but there's a Kenyan on this
Now
side.
you are.
So today,
That's very
but
cool.
I think they'll have their hands full. So
Yes, yes. I, I think for mine, if I had to pick one over the other,
mhm.
I want to see Seattle take it. I
Okay,
think it'll be a heck of a tough game for them, but I really do. I want to see them take it, and if I had to put numbers to it, I'm going to say it's somewhere. It's going to be close, and I'm going to
very
say
close.
somewhere around the 35, 32, 30, 33 and 0, 33 and 30. Somewhere in that ballpark.
You're counting on that California weather for those scores.
Oh yes, oh yes. It'll
Mm,
be 70 degrees and sunny. Uh, it'll suck that they can't be at
perfect
the beach
rugby weather.
surfing right down the road.
So I think scores. I think it'll be less than one score, probably in the 20s. I'm
Okay.
expecting a bit of a more defensive. I think the first half will be a bit more cagey. I think you're
Mm,
going to see a bit more of a chess match in the first half, probably a lot of territorial kicking, and then they'll kind of settle into it. Somebody will score, and then that'll put the other team in the place where they have to go and do the business. Then
okay.
I think a nice open second half, but the first half's probably going to be cagey.
That's good.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up here.
Yes, sir.
We'll let you guys know. We don't have a watch party scheduled for this Sunday for the championship game. If something like that changes, we'll let you guys know on the socials. Keep an eye there.
Hmm.
I'm still doing my weekly giveaways on socials. You'll see a question posted Monday or Tuesday. It's not a trivia question. It's just a tell me what you think of this. Post a response, and I'll put your name in the drawings for Friday and get you some Jakl Den swag. We still have Jakl Den scarves. Hit us up for those. We haven't really said a
Cool.
lot about it, but we do still have our Titan Rugby Jakl Den store online where we have Jakl Den shirts, hoodies, blankets, bags, phone cases,
I'm
stuff
gonna
like that on there.
I'm gonna pitch the hoodie because let me tell you something. I have a bunch of hoodies, and that Jackal Den hoodie is the best. That
Yeah,
Titan kit, that gear is legit. It's
yeah,
it's it's
it's good quality
inexpensive.
stuff.
So go get yourself a nice Jackal Den hoodie at the very
Yeah,
least. They're fantastic.
very true.
Yes,
Well, thank
sir.
you so much for your time, Kibui. I appreciate it. You have a great rest of your week. Jakl Den and Jakl's fans, we are off for tonight, but we will be coming at you again soon. Thank you very much.
Over and out.